What would be some do's and don'ts when it comes to heating and cooling our homes?
Have a plan and then understand what problem you're trying to solve with those systems. And one of the key things is every time you've got to make a hole in the building envelope, you want to think very carefully about, do we really need to do this?
So we're really trying to help you wean yourself off fossil fuels by designing your house to be sustainable. And that means trying to reduce your winter energy bill, because most heating is done at nighttime. If you can reduce that, you're not using fossil fuels. Obviously, you might have a battery, but that hasn't had as much uptake as solar has. So winter is really about the sustainability of your energy supply. Summer, now we're thinking around as houses as adaptable. So we've got heat waves. Often we can have really cold periods in summer as well. So we're trying to encourage people to think about their house the way we might manage a sailing ship. And maybe that doesn't quite make sense, but if you think about a boat, you've got a direction you want to go and the winds are changing and you're using your sails to take you in that direction and adapt to whatever the conditions are that are being thrown at you. So if you think about shading a house, you want to think about what's obviously the right fixed eave, or so that I can manage the sun and whether it's coming in or not. But then what are my options for adaptable shading? Do I have trees? Do I have, low cost options like shade cloths? Do I have fancy screens that I can move? And then I get to control whether that free heat comes into my house when I want it or whether I'm excluding it all. So I'm staying cool and comfortable all of the time. And as well as that, in that resilience package, we'll also want to think about what's happening in high rainfall events and what's happening with bushfires, smokes, and that bigger picture of resilience and adaptability. And
yeah, so we'd like to talk about that as some levers that you can pull within the building, like in a ship. So like, okay, there's where we live, we've gone through at least 2 major bushfire events, and during those periods, you have to have your house closed up, and to be able, so that would be a lever going, okay, we know we can close all our windows and doors and we can manage a volume of air in our house for comfort and for, building health, and also manage the health of the buildings. So that's another critical one. So we'd start talking about a HRV system and air tightness and the wraps in the building as part of that sort of climate or resilience strategy. And if you talk to most people who've got solar in Australia, generally they're getting credit back in the summertime for the solar they're producing. So it comes back to what Hannah was saying earlier. You've got an abundance of energy in summer, so it's not really a sustainability problem in terms of energy. You just use your aircon. You've got an abundance of power, and if you need to cool your house down, it's because the sun's out and it's hot. So you're going to have more power than you need in most cases. So that's why we'd sort of talk, well, the design really needs to answer the sustainability question, which is generally about winter in the vast majority of Australia. And then you've got these kind of different modes of how you're running the house and how you're thinking about it. And that sort of flows out of looking at this as more of a seasonal or a daily net zero challenge, which I think resonates to a lot of people.
I think that's such great terminology, and probably without getting off track, just for listeners, with a HRV. So if we've got bushfire smoke, you've got different filters that can be put into your HRV to filter out different particles. There a lot more information there, so we won't go right into it, but they are great for occupant health.
I would go one step further down and say, I would say it's part of a modern building that's dealing with a significant winter period or is looking at a climate resilient strategy. It's a lever. It doesn't mean you've got to have that building closed up all the time or you're building a passive house. It just means you've got the ability to manage a volume of air in the house. And if you can do that, you can then heat and cool it in a sensible way and keep everyone healthy. So
Yeah, and I think that's only just sort of coming online in terms of having an array of systems, so that you have options for a passive house with a really high degree of air tightness. It'd be good to see more in this middle market where, we don't have that degree of air tightness. Maybe we're in the 2 to 4 air changes per hour category. And we just want to look at managing the volume of air, optimizing health, and, preventing moisture and condensation in our walls, that sort of thing.
And on a little side note, one of the services we offer is at close to lock-up stage, we come out and look at the building wrap, how it's detailed, the taping and the wraps. And instead of doing a blower door test, we just look at the detailing. We're like, okay, well, let's attend to this and get this right, talk about what the standard says. And we found that this is one of the things that builders are really enjoying doing this with us, because we're eliminating issues. We're solving them when it's easy to solve them. But once you've sheeted a house and you do a blower door test, it's kind of pointless. You can't really rectify anything. So, and again, this also comes back to your strategy for like air tightness. If you're using the internal plasterboard or an internal layer, or just the weather tightness layer. But we don't
have to go into all the details.
We don't have to go into all the details. Yeah.
So I know, like Dean and myself in our businesses, we do a pretty involved pre-construction process. So collaboration is definitely key. We like to get all of our consultants involved as early as possible. For those that don't understand the process, when would you guys suggest, when would be an ideal time to engage an energy consultant, and what would people actually need to be able to approach you?
So you need to have a plan that shows all the different zones of the house and approximate window openings. So you have to have an idea of them.
What I would say is we do now a 2-stage energy rating process. So we really want to encourage people. What we have found, particularly in New South Wales, who've been dealing with 7 stars for a while, and they started from a pretty low base, more like 5.5, even less equivalent. Some people have come to us with very advanced plans, and we've been unable to pass them, just on the basis of the amount of glass, the complexity of the dwelling, things like that. And so we really strongly encourage everyone to come at this stage Andy's talking about, when you have the basics of a plan, the placement of windows, the zones, and we do 2 energy ratings. We do one at that stage, and then we do the final one when we just need to sign off on a little paperwork and probably things have changed. And we find having this design stage energy rating is when we can help you the most. So we can, it also means there's usually a bit of flexibility in the design. Maybe we can move that window, maybe we could tweak that zone.
You might want to adjust the sizes of them. You don't necessarily know how you're building it, or what colors or finishes you're using. All of this stuff is a very small percentage impact on the energy rating, and it's not the fundamental pieces. The fundamental piece is the form of the building, the zones, the window openings, the shading, and its sighting.
It's also, if you're trying to manage the cost of your build and getting it complied, making these design changes is generally the cheapest thing you can do. If you're trying to avoid having to go to, say, triple glazing, maybe sometimes double glazing, although we're really big fans of double glazing, changing the design is going to give you the highest return, because it means you're not wasting money up-speccing things for a particular placement.
100%.
And so that's why, the 2-stage energy rating process is our strong recommendation. In terms of wrapping buildings, things like that,
that's probably your biggest lever in terms of actually impacting the performance of the building and how much energy it's going to use, is air tightness.
But we often just do one-off consults.
That's right.
Particularly, we've worked with a few builders who are like just looking at, I want to upskill. So let's come onto site and let's just walk through, how do we wrap this? How do we tape it? Because once you know, I'm sure both of you are familiar with that, and you don't need to go back to that.
But some of these builders, one of them rang me and we accidentally achieved sort of passive house level air tightness with standard construction. And we'd already planned to put in a HRV system in that house and had a strategy for how we were going to manage that. And we really feel like that was a testament to that collaboration and process. And obviously his implementation was excellent. So, I mean, just anecdotally kind of interesting as well.
It's funny, we don't like wrapping presents. I normally palm that off, but I do like wrapping houses. We love our, both Luke and myself use Pro Climber on our builds, and, our team. Yeah, our team get a lot of joy and satisfaction. We just had a house get under 0.6 air changes. It's not passive house. We used great WRB system. I think we had the Intello for the ceiling for the air tightness layer, and then we used plasterboard for the external walls and things like our airtight boxes, PowerPoint boxes and stuff. Okay. So there's a lot for people to see. So I mean, yeah. I do feel too, like when a team's upskilling, if you're a builder or trader, you want to upskill a bit. Like the wrapping, getting that right at the start. That's it's up from there.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's like, and the moisture and condensation provisions have put that front and center. And I think if you're attending to those details, you're going to come in at 5 air changes an hour. And that now mandates you to have a kind of mechanical ventilation strategy. And you'd be very wise to do that from the onset and just have that piece. And I think if you're using HRV, there's also definitely, you can make a house work without having to double wrap it and have an internal moisture or air tightness layer as well.
Definitely. Guys, you touched a little bit on compliance there, and obviously with the app and the software building, obviously also as well, you're consulting with your clients and trying to make their buildings compliant. So you've got a lot of hats you're wearing there as well. But, can we talk a little bit something we're passionate about, and that's, managing mental health and well-being and that of your team as well. What are some things that you guys are doing?
Well, yeah, it's interesting that you raised that, because it became clear to us recently with these higher standards, it's becoming a bit more high pressure job for us, because nobody wants to be in a position where we're telling someone that their house can't be built. Their dream home is impossible to comply. Like, that's kind of a nightmare scenario. Or you've got to spend an extra $100,000 or something to do some additional work. It's really quite stressful. And so I would say two things. One is we've moved in the direction of the app, because when we focus on things that are optimistic, which is more of this, what does a good house look like and how do we take you on that journey? That's life-giving and encouraging, and it can offset, the compliance stress. But the other thing that's really big for us is we recently moved to a 4-day work week for our whole team.
Yes. I had a couple of colleagues ring me up and say, how do you do this? How do you go to 4 days a week? And I said, it's really simple. You just tell everyone that you're going to do it, and then you just don't go to work on that day.
I need to jump in here for a minute, guys, and take a moment to thank our sponsors, Backman Builders, Calorie Building, and Build Imagery. Without the support of these businesses, the Build Insight podcast wouldn't be possible. So jump over and show the support for them so they can continue to support the Build Insight podcast.
And then you're still allowed to work, but if you're working, it has to be things that you want to do, like your highest value things. So
we're a bit inspired by Google's 20% time. So this idea that, if you spend 20% of your time doing a personal project that's of interest to you, that's going to have bigger benefits for your life and possibly for the company if it's work related. And so I feel like, the app that we've built, we feel that, like, when we watch someone use it for the first time, it's just aha moment. And that's really affirming. And I think that's kind of come out of these like side questions around how do we help communicate the outcome of this energy rating better, or how do we help someone make this decision and understand what this information really means. So,
but if you want to build software because you think it's a good way of getting out of work, then you're definitely misguided. And I don't know if we would have started if we had any clue how much work this would take. And I think if you dig deeper into the world of software development, you will realize that this is really hard going. But super rewarding. Yeah,
to continue on that, guys, actually, I'm just looking at some statistics on your website, like in the journey that Powerhaus has had so far, like saving nearly 4,500 CO2 emissions. You've rated over 2,500 houses and saved almost $1.5 million in energy savings for your clients. That must be so incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, I think for us, we've tried to capture some of those statistics, and really it's about that vision. It's like, well, what are these homes doing in 20 years time, 30 years time when we've transitioned to renewables? Do we have the infrastructure with the forethought in them that is going to work, and can we become a renewable superpower as a country and have homes that actually solve our fundamental problems and are kind of seen as little power stations that are keeping people healthy and comfortable and building resilience. And I think we have all these pieces to do this. It's all here, and it's just about putting the picture together. And I think that for us is a really exciting vision.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where we came with the app, because, you know, we often find when we're consulting on a particular house, we're saying the same things that we've said over and over again. And it's a similar message to what I guess Saul Griffiths is saying, if you've seen his work around electrifying Australia. We have all the technology to do this immediately. We just need to spread the word. And so we're trying to make it easier to spread the word, and also easy for people to understand their own homes and the great decisions they can make.
And empower professionals and homeowners with this information. So we really see it as an empowering piece, where instead of it being kind of this complex information that's locked up in a compliance framework, sitting behind someone that's certified to use the software and create a certificate. Instead, no, this is in the designer's hands, and in the homeowner's hands or in the builder's hands, bringing the team together to collaborate and answer the questions with clarity.
Often, we have some great architects who use our platform. They already know what to do. They use the platform to help explain why they're making those decisions for their clients.
So the client's saying, well, why do we have to triple glaze these windows? And it's like, well, there's 40 square meters of glass facing the view that's less than optimal in terms of its orientation. So, we've got some options here. We could reduce the amount of that glass. We could do a few things, and then they've got those decisions and they know what levers are at their disposal, and they can start to put that picture together.
So on the app, guys, what's the steps with, if you've got a hands-on approach, training people up to use the app? Talk us through that.
Yeah, good question. So at this stage, it's designed so that it takes all of the NatHERS, which is the compliance energy rating data, and turns it into live data that you use in a dashboard. And we have experimented with just giving designers access to this without any guidance. And then we've experimented with, videos and a guidebook, and then also working through it with them. And we find that usually within about 10 to 15 minutes of a little demo and putting it in their hands, they're becoming quite dangerous pretty quickly with it. And we often get emails back going, this is amazing, thank you. And then interesting things that they're learning. So I guess that part of it's working quite well. The challenge that we're working towards is making this available for other organizations, other energy assessors. And that challenge is two-part. Just in some of them are focused on the compliance challenge just uniquely, and so this doesn't necessarily solve that problem, and it's still something that's probably undervalued within the industry, and so there's a real challenge there to make this more mainstream. We're looking at how we solve that problem and how we can bring that into other teams' workflows. And we've got a few things that we're working on around that hopefully we can implement in some period of time.
No, that's fantastic, guys. I just want to touch on something that was raised. There was a survey by an industry body done last year that actually found that thermal assessors were basically underpaying themselves from what they're worth. And, we've spoken already on how valuable it is to get the right people on board, get your checks done. So you're actually adding more value to a client, to somebody building a house, to a designer, to a builder. Does it change the mind? Does mindset need to change away from just being another consultant to more of an investment, do you think?
100%. I think this has really plagued the industry for a while. A lot of energy assessors left the industry when it transitioned to 7 stars because of the complexity, and also the level of complexity increased significantly around that legislation change. And I think because it's been typically seen as a compliance add-on at the end, it's struggling with that. And I would say the NatHERS tools themselves, or one of them particularly, is really improving and becoming far more usable. And so if you are thinking of starting to use a NatHERS tool, big shout out to Hero and Nick Bishop and what he's been developing. And I think that's helping a lot of energy assessors, and it's still a big journey to go on and to set yourself up to do that. And part of our job, we feel, is to protect people from some of the challenges of using that particular software, just the NatHERS framework altogether. Gone a little bit.
But also just thinking about it as an investment is a really powerful way to understand it, because it's an investment in the comfort and health of your family. It's sort of a non-negotiable. You only have to live in a moldy house or a cold house, or a house where you're spending $2,000 a quarter on energy bills. You don't have to live in one of those houses once to understand the value. And sometimes we do talk about return on investment on a particular material upgrade. Like, should I go from, aluminium windows to UPVC double glazed? And there's definitely a monetary value in terms of how that's going to increase your comfort, reduce your bills. But there's also a huge intangible in just living in a comfortable house. And there's a huge impact on your mental health, your general well-being, your physical health, and as well as your back pocket. So thinking about the bigger impacts, it kind of becomes a no-brainer to go with good advice.
That's spot on. And to that, I would also add just the proportion of that cost in comparison to what you're going to spend on a house and building that. These are really negligible costs in that picture that are going to have long-term effects. So I do think there needs to be a fundamental shift in the residential sector, the way energy ratings are thought of. And I think someone said recently, your energy assessor is now more important than your building designer, which it's potentially a stretch. But I think the point they're trying to make is the energy assessor could just look at this and say, well, you can't build this. This is not buildable in terms of it meeting all of the compliance frameworks.
It's no longer just a box to tick. As you said earlier, it is harder to go from 6 to 7 stars than it was previously. But what you're saying there too, we recently had Alexia Leadus, the CEO of Passive House Association, on, and we discussed, if you could bottle up that feeling being in a high performance home, something that's a bit more airtight, to get that feeling, like the calmness about it too. It's just so underrated. I know it's one of my favorite things about walking into our builds.
It's like a stillness, isn't it? It's hard to describe it.
Yeah, so I think I'd encourage anyone thinking about building to, things like open days and getting out there and meeting maybe the preferred builder or designer on one of their projects and get a feel for how a house, it doesn't have to be finished. I know even if it's just wrapped properly, you feel it without insulation in yet.
Yeah.
So, some encouraging things there, guys. And I think you've added so much value to the steps of what you do. I don't reckon this will be the last time we have you guys on the Build Insight podcast, just quietly. Some more topics I'm sure we can be diving into.
Yeah, I particularly love going down any rabbit hole, Dean.
Unfortunately, guys, I'm going to run out of time today, but just quickly, where can people find out more about the interesting work from Powerhaus and follow along?
The best place is our website. We're also active on Instagram. If you want to find out about working with us, you can request a quote. It's free, and that will also give you more information. So
our website, powerhousengineering.com.au.
Powerhouse with a German spelling, because we're trying to borrow all the good ideas from the Europeans.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time coming on today, guys. Andrew and Hannah from Powerhaus Engineering, we really appreciate your time. Guys, I hope you got a lot of value out of this podcast today. If you want to find out more, definitely jump over and check out Powerhaus, Powerhaus.com.au. I'm sure they've got some social media that if you dig hard enough, you'll find as well. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Hope you've enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you on the next one. Let's cue the disclaimer. I need to let you know that myself and the Build Insight team are in no way, shape or form qualified to give you personal or specific business advice. We strongly encourage you seek out the use of professionals for products or when you are making personal or business decisions. Everything discussed during the Build Insight podcast is our own and the guest opinion and personal experience and is of a general nature only. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Catch you on the next one.